Hi, I'm Kristen McKee. This is my presentation for my research paper for History 495. My topic has been Franklin and the role that he played in the withdrawal of the Quakers from the Quaker Assembly and from the government and largely from political life in Pennsylvania in the 1760s. And my argument is that Benjamin Franklin's role in these events has been understated and in some cases overlooked. While his life has been documented and his writings have all been edited and published many times over, most of the writings about his dealings with Pennsylvania Assembly and in Philadelphia are forward-looking to the role that he would play in the creation of the new United States. There's not a lot of examination of his impact on the government before that. So I came across this topic because I was interested in the Quaker government and how something that could seem so very American ideologically could fail so quickly. And the Quaker government there was established in 1682 and was pretty successful, and there were a few instances of dissent, the Keithian Schism, obviously we read about in class, and a few other minor ones that they overcame. And Philadelphia was a prospering city, and Pennsylvania was a destination that was desired for its religious tolerance and for the peaceful community. So it seemed interesting to me that something that was so admired could fail so quickly. And really it failed between 1730 and 1760 after many decades of success and of harmonious, peaceful government. So the more I read about what happened and you know how it fell apart, the more I felt that Benjamin Franklin had a pretty significant role there. His religious views were not widely known at the time, and even now there's still readings and some debate about what exactly his religious views were. But he did write about them privately. In a few cases he wrote about them publicly. And the thing that is most striking is that he felt religious tolerance was misplaced in government. His idea of religious tolerance was you are willing to compromise your belief for the social good, and your religion promotes moral and social order, and that would enable you to have religious freedom if you meet those criteria. And that's a pretty boiled down version of it. But so it just seemed to me that there was more there. There was more to the story than the Quakers were resistant to colonial defense, and they were resistant to war, and so they just left the government. That's not really what happened entirely. My research methodology has been pretty straightforward because, as I mentioned, Benjamin Franklin's life has been pretty well researched and written about and documented, and he had all of his own personal writings that were saved. It's all available digitally. In addition, the Pennsylvania Assembly documents that he was responsible for writing and approving and publishing are all available digitally through the Pennsylvania State Historical Society. And there's pretty extensive writings on William Penn's ideologies and why he wanted to start the colony and what his hopes were for it. And there's also a considerable body of writing on civic religion, which is really what Benjamin Franklin's beliefs could be termed in modern day terms. So methodology has been pretty simple in that regard, and it's really about pulling out Benjamin Franklin's religious beliefs and seeing how they, at different times in his life, how they affected the decisions that he made publicly. So my paper kind of takes that same path, just describing what William Penn's ideals were and what Benjamin Franklin's religious views were and how they progressed, and then showing the interplay between Franklin and the Quakers and what was happening in Pennsylvania at the time, and how he used his relationship with the Quakers in the assembly, and his own personal religious views and views of religious tolerance to get what he wanted, which was the public good and the best thing for society, but did not always mean that he was practicing religious tolerance. He never really approved of organized religion. He never felt favor with any specific religious sect, and had his own ascribed set of beliefs that he had pieced together from his readings, and he was very well versed, I think, in religious tenets of different faiths, and he took those bits and parts and kind of put together his own form of religion, which could mostly be called deism. He believed in a God, and he believed in the divinity and power of God, but that was kind of the broad sweep of it, and the rest of his religious goals were centered on doing good to and for other people. So in his mind, the Quakers should have been willing to compromise their position for the good of the colony, for the good of society, and they should have been willing to fund colonial defense. They should have been willing to pay taxes or whatever they were asked to do if it meant it was for the good of society, even if it was completely against Quaker doctrines. And when they wouldn't do that, he was not afraid to say that Quaker religious doctrine and governing did not work well together. Once he was elected to the Pennsylvania Assembly, he didn't write out publicly as often, but he frequently wrote in his personal letters to and from friends, and in diaries, and in his autobiography too. He wasn't afraid to voice that opinion. So I think that in reading through all of that, and in the timeline and the events that were happening in the assembly, and the resulting withdrawal of the Quakers in 1755, 1756, and 1764, it's clear that while he didn't ask them to leave, that he approved their withdrawal from the assembly, and he felt that it was the best thing for society, and that religious tolerance wasn't really what it was cracked up to be, which ultimately in Pennsylvania, that's how the general population ended up kind of feeling, that religious tolerance was more of a hindrance and a roadblock to them achieving what they felt they should be achieving than it was a goal, a virtuous goal.